Thank you all first for coming. Like, I always find it fucking mind-blowing that people will come from all over to hear me talk or meet me or whatever it is. Fucking came from Kildare, like 3-hour drive. And I'm sure some of you came from just as far as girls fucking travels up from Galway, and I'm down there. So it's really cool. So thanks so much, because that means so much to me. It blows my mind even that people just, even when people stop me on the street for photos and things like that, I love that. So when the girls are like, oh, I'm sorry, I'm going to get another photo, I'm like, I fucking love that shit. So so don't worry about it. When, you know, what I'll do is today, we're going to kind of go freestyle with this. Everything I do, anyone that follows me, I assume you all follow me on some form of social media, that everything I do is fucking freestyle anyway. Apologies for the swear in advance. Sorry. Everything is freestyle. So we're going to basically go with whatever direction you want to go with today. So what I'll do is I'll start it off. I'll do 10-15 minutes, talk my journey, kind of start to finish, just to give you a bit more of a background, maybe some things you don't know. And then whatever direction you want to go with the Q&A, we'll go off on that. So we'll do, you know, 10-15 minutes, I'll talk through my journey. We'll do 40 minutes of Q&A and stuff. And then what we'll do is the last hour, if you want to come up and talk to me privately, because there might be stuff you don't want to talk about in a group or whatever it is, you can come up, chat to me about whatever it is you want that you don't want to put out there publicly or whatever. So that sound okay? Awesome. Okay, so give you a little bit of a background to me. Who's following me here who followed from Snapchat? Yeah, so there we go. I was telling Terry earlier, like, the power of Snapchat right now is fucking amazing. Like, it's my favorite platform. So if you're following me on there, if you aren't, and then the hands stay down, I'm like, follow my Snapchat. Like, because all my stuff's on Snapchat now, because again, it's where the attention is. It's my favorite platform. It's the only thing, like, I was talking to you on Snapchat, you know. It's the only thing I can message people back and forth. Come on in, you're fine. Do the gym people come in straight through here as well, or is this everyone? Nice one. So basically, my background. I grew up in a farm in Connemara, in Galway. So that's kind of where I started everything off, literally in the middle of nowhere. Like, I've gone back there now. Like, I've traveled around the world. I've lived in London. I lived in Sligo for fucking 5 years. But I went to London, I was in California, and now I'm back, and I live in Galway City at the minute. Am I okay? Yeah. I live in Galway City at the minute, but I'm building a house out in Connemara, so fucking everything does a full circle on things because I like the quietness. So I grew up there. Went to college up here in Sligo, did my undergraduate up here. I was chatting to a couple of the girls earlier about finding your life path and things like that, and like, I didn't fucking know until I was 25 what I wanted to do. You know, I was working as a primary school teacher in London. I'd done an undergraduate in business. I hadn't a fucking clue what I wanted to do, you know. So we'll probably go in a little bit of direction with that as well. If anyone has any questions about your path and stuff like that, I'm pretty good with that because I've been everywhere and I went through long periods of not knowing what I wanted to do. So basically, I went to Sligo, did my undergraduate here, got myself a massive fucking drinking problem because that's what you learn up here. Like, anyone that's in fucking Sligo, you learn to fucking party. Like, so I remember my 4th year, I was doing the fucking rag week up here, and it was Wednesday of the rag week, and I remember getting really, really bad fucking pains in my stomach. I was like, oh, this is the worst hangover of my life. Had to go home, pulled over to the side of the road, made a fucking, threw up everywhere, started puking blood. I had to be hospitalized because I gave myself a fucking ulcer from drinking too much. So basically I had a massive alcohol problem. So we did that, went to the hospital, was there for a week, stomach ulcer, started bleeding, and I came out of there, and that's kind of where my fitness journey started because my health was fucked, basically. I was put up, got in every sort of fucking tube in every direction you can fucking go, and it was horrible. But they found out that, you know, it was a lifestyle based. I was eating shit. I was still training, but I was eating shit and I was drinking way too much. So I kind of went away from that side of things. I threw myself into the gym, and my whole life kind of took a directional change then. It went from being party, being sociable, being all of that to obsessive into the gym, which tends to happen with people that are into the gym. You tend to go full whack into it when you throw yourself in first, which I'll talk about as well, because it's not always the best way to do it because a lot of the gold in life is in the balance. But I did that, went over to London then, studied to be a primary school teacher, did that for 4 years in London, lived in central London, still lived a fitness lifestyle, didn't know what I wanted to do. I was, good luck with the 30th. I still didn't know what I wanted to do. I always had this thing for fitness. I always loved training. I always had this feeling that I was destined for something bigger that wasn't fucking teaching, that wasn't the generic status quo of everybody else. But of course, as life fucking goes, people tell you can't do something and you get fucking hammered back down and you just follow the path that everyone else does. You go to college, you get a job, you do your 9 to 5, you pay your bills and you die. Like which isn't wrong. Some people are really happy doing that, but I wasn't. And it was hard to make that transition because I was working. Am I still here? Am I okay?
All good.
Yeah. I was working as a teacher. I loved it. Like you were saying, you're a primary school teacher as well, and I loved it when I was doing it, you know, but it wasn't my calling. It wasn't the thing that made me get out of bed every morning. It wasn't my why. You know, it was a case that I was waking up every morning and I knew I was going to work. I was going to bed every Sunday evening knowing I'd work the next day. What I love so much about my life right now is I don't know when it's fucking Monday, Sunday or Friday. They're all the same. You know, I'm not counting down to the weekend. I'm not counting down to the next holiday. And that's what I was doing when I was teaching. You know, I remember when I was on my teaching practice, one of the teachers was like, being a full-time teacher is kind of like being in prison because you're always counting down to the next holiday, you know? And that landed with me like a brick to the fucking head. I was like, I don't want to live my life like this, you know? So I made the jump out of it, tried to start my business in London, failed, you know, as fucking most businesses when you start first completely failed. Like I did a YouTube video and I talked about it briefly on my podcast. Anyone listen to my podcast? Yeah. On my podcast I don't know if the episode's gone out yet, but basically how I blew up. My mum and dad gave me $5,000 to get set up in my business. And my mum and dad are good supporters. My mum particularly is my biggest fan. Like I'm bringing my mum to New York next week just as a thank you for everything she's always given me, you know, and they gave me $5,000. They were like, go set up your business. Go do the personal training thing. Blew through it in a fucking month. Like overheads, gym gone, all the overheads, my rent in London, which was more than my mortgage now. Like it was fucking crazy. And I literally remember, and I said this in the podcast episode, fishing through our fucking couch for pennies for the bus because I had no fucking money. So when people say things now about, oh, it's great that you've got a new car and a nice house and all of these things, I'm like, oh, I know what it was like to have nothing. Like, I was like, those things mean fuck all now. They're nice status symbols and stuff like that people will see and go, oh, they're doing well. But the reality is it means nothing because when you get humbled and you have to fish through your fucking couch for pennies for the bus, nothing will ever fucking matter in terms of how badly your life is and how low you can feel about yourself when you can't make a fucking living for yourself. When you can't put food on your table and you can't go onto a bus. So that was probably my lowest point in terms of the business. I had my tail between my legs and I went back teaching. So a lot of people don't know that because it's something I've only talked on briefly, but just to give you a little bit of a background in terms of, because when people see that I'm here, and there's no difference between me and anyone here in this room except that I persevered with the vision that I had in mind. That's the only difference, you know, and hopefully if that's all you even get leaving here, that you're like, oh, this is what I fucking want, and I'm gonna go for that. That's the only difference between me and you right now, is I had a vision of what I wanted to do and I'm living it now. That's the only difference, and I persevered through when people said I shouldn't, couldn't, or wouldn't. And that's, if that's all you leave with here, then it was worth hopefully your 3-hour trip or whatever it was, you know. But basically, I tail between my legs, went back teaching, full time, and then started to slowly build up my business again on the side. So I basically worked as a teacher. Anyone that taught in London or in England, it's completely different. There's no textbooks, the days are longer. You know, you've got to be in at like 7:30 in the morning, you're not allowed to leave till like 4:30. So they're your hours, and then everything else on top of that, because there's no books, you've got marking and paperwork. So I basically went back full-time teaching, and I started my business at night time. So I went in, I thought during the day, I left school at 4:30. I was out the door. I was the only teacher in the whole fucking school. I was out the door at 4:30 because that's when we were contracted to leave. And I was out the door at 4:30 and I take a client by 5. You know, and I started building up my business that way then. So it's one of these things when people say that you don't have time. Everyone has time, it's just not a priority. Like that's the only difference with everything, whether you want to, you know, start your own business or get in amazing shape or do a show or whatever it is that you want. You're not making it a priority is probably the only difference. It's not a time thing. And that one change of mindset, I remember reading a book. Anyone follow Gary Vaynerchuk? Gary Vaynerchuk is like a social media expert. And I remember it was him, I was watching a YouTube video of him, and he was saying that everybody has fucking 24 hours. He was like, you just haven't prioritized what you want the most. And I remember thinking, okay, I need to start my business on the side. I was like, I need to side hustle, he calls it. So I did my full-time job and I side hustled. Like I literally just did my fucking 5 days a week, Monday to Friday, and I took my clients in the evening. I had to go to a park because I couldn't afford a gym. So I used to take my clients in the park, you know, and I was literally in a little park beside, it was Chiswick. Who was Chiswick? In Chiswick Park. I used to use the park there, and I didn't have enough money to even pay the park fee. So anytime anyone came, I had to tell all the people that would come to my classes or do the one-to-one, they were friends. I was like, just tell them we're friends, don't tell them you're paying me. I was like, because I'm going to get fucking sued. I'll edit that out. So that was the case with that, and I side hustled. And what happened there was, I started to realize that I was pretty good at personal training. I was pretty good at working in the fitness because it was my passion. It always has been. Even when I went off my path and went fucking drinking and crazy in college, I still trained, you know. Like I started training at 13. My 16th birthday present from my mum and dad was a gym membership, and I've been in a gym since. You know, I'm 29 tomorrow. That's what fucking my math, 16 years? Like 16 years, I was a fucking teacher, like 16 years in a gym. So, and it was consistent. I just fucking partied on top of it. So, like, but that was the case that it was something that came very, very naturally. It was something I was always curious about. I always loved the way the body was, the health side of things, which I'll get into because I went away from that for a fucking while again. Where you tend to do cycles of life where you're, you know, all fitness or all business or all health or whatever the fuck it is you're doing. Everyone does it with every aspect. It's just different channels. But basically, I went from London, my business started to build gradually, and then it was to the point that I had a lot of my clients say, look, you need to do this full time, because they knew I was teaching. They were like, look, you're really fucking good. And I started to get some pretty good before and afters. So I was like, you know what, fuck this. I decided I'm leaving London, I'm going to come back and set up in Galway. You know, I'm going to set it up at home. It was a friend of mine now, Pat Divley. Anyone know Pat? You probably heard of Pat. A friend of mine, Pat, I didn't know Pat at the time, but I had this. And I told him the first time we met, because we met for coffee when I came back. He was like, oh, I follow you, because I started competing and climbing that ladder. And he was like, I follow you. And I was like, I follow you. He was like, let's meet for coffee, let's be friends. Like, so that's kind of what happened there. And I told him, I remember seeing him online. I remember coming to a staff room, and there was a teacher with me who was from Roscommon. We were the only 2 Irish teachers in the school, staff of 65. And he was like, oh, have you seen this Pat Divley guy? And I was like, no, I've never heard of him. He goes, yeah, he set up a business in Galway. I was like, yeah. So I checked him out, saw he had a gym, saw he had a fitness thing. And I had this vision in my head going, you can't make fitness or personal training or that work in Galway. Or you can't make that work in Ireland. Which is fucking ridiculous when you think of it. It's limited thinking. You cap your own. All your limitations are self-created. And I remember thinking, fuck, well, if he could do it, I was like, I could do it. I was like, and that's basically what spurred me on. I was like, do you know what, I'm making this jump. So I moved back, set up my business at home. Anyone that's followed, I put up a video that got a lot of traction about how I moved back. I moved back and I went on social welfare when I moved back. I had no job. Like, I went on social welfare. I was teaching subbing when I came back first to try and bring in some income when I was trying to get my business up and running. And it took, because no one knew who I was. I came back. I'm nearly 4 years back, 3-4 years back. I had no Facebook page. I had no Instagram. There was no Snapchat. There was no podcast. You know, it was a case that I came back with nothing in terms of, all I had was knowledge in my head and a vision of where I wanted to be. I knew that I wanted to do this. I knew that I wanted to be able to walk down the street and have people come up and say, that video helped me, you know, because I followed people like Elliot Hulse, who later helped me set up my business, and people like Gary Vaynerchuk and these people on YouTube, and they were helping me, and I'm like, I fucking love that. I was like, I want to do that. I was like, these guys are helping me, and they're doing it for fucking free. I was like, they've helped, because I had no money. I couldn't have paid for a fucking video. Even if they had it, I wouldn't have had the money because I was working as a fucking teacher in London. You know, you were in London, you're a teacher, they're not good combinations. London's expensive, teaching money is shit. Like, so it wasn't a good fucking combination in terms of you didn't have a lot of areas, you couldn't go and get to a mentor, you couldn't go to a mastermind group because you had no money. So I came back and a lot of what I'd learned was my own kind of graft, and started to build. So my business built as a one-to-one trainer, and I built that up to basically what it is now, where my lifestyle and my business are one and the same. You know, I wake up every morning, my job and my life are so integrated together that it's unbelievable to me that I get to live this life. And it's even, as I said, my gratefulness to you that you're here to fucking listen to me and ask me questions and whatever it is, and that you're paying. You could be doing anything right now. You could be going to the gym, you could be, you know, fucking planning your night out, you could be doing whatever it is, but you're here. And that means so much to me, and it's genuine. And I think a lot of the reason people follow me is because they see the genuineness, because I hate the fucking bullshit on social media, and there's so much of it, like, particularly in the fucking fitness side of things. And I wanted to break through that. So largely when I came back, started competing, went into bodybuilding, went fucking pretty high in that in terms of, for anyone that follows competitive, like anyone here compete? I know a couple of you, yeah, a couple of you compete. So I went pretty far in that. Like I prepped Terry, who set this all up. I prepped him for his first show. Like I did the Miami Pro, won a pro card in that, which is basically where you can compete for money. I went to Vegas, came 8th in the world in Vegas, did pretty well on that whole side of things. And then came out of that side of things because when you see what the fuck is in the middle of that, you tend to not like it very much, because there's some great people in that side of the fitness industry, but there's a lot of not so great people. There's a lot of narcissism, there's a lot of me, there's a lot of all the shit that no one talks about. I didn't like that side of things. I didn't like the fucking person I was becoming, and then I had my little girl who's a year and a half, and my whole life fucking changed. Like I would nearly bank that anyone that's in this room, you're probably following me in the last 18 months. Am I right? Anyone following me before that? Yeah, because I was a dickhead. Like, so, that's basically why. When Holly was born, my life took a complete different direction. I was this fucking hashtag, this shit's gonna be fucking on a t-shirt someday of social media wanker. Like, because I was an social media wanker, because I was that guy, the same as everyone else in the fucking fitness industry. So I was that guy. And when Holly was born, my whole direction changed, my why changed. I was hell-bent on becoming the fucking best in the world at competing. Like going through the WBFF, which is a federation, which I fucking learned that that most people don't know the difference between WBFF and KFC. They're just fucking letters to people, When I learned that, I was like, holy fuck, what am I doing? I was doing everything to the extreme. I was extremely dieting. I was fucking using shit that was making my body toxic. Like fat burners and abusing cardio and training and literally running my body into the ground to try and be the top of this competitive world. And then I remember having a vision, it was like a dream, but it was like a day vision of being in a hospital bed in 10 years' time with my fucking 10-year-old girl coming up and going, why are you in bed, Daddy? And you're throwing trophies at her going, oh, well, Daddy's the best in the world. I was like, the fucking good is that? That was the day I was like, this isn't me anymore. This isn't what I'm doing anymore. This wasn't why I was fucking put here. So I changed my entire direction. And the reason that any of you are listening to me now is probably because of that. Because my why changed, and I didn't want to be that same social media selfie wanker as everybody else. I'm like, I'm going to go out there and I'm going to I think it's Gandhi or Buddha, I can't remember the quote, be the change you want to see. I remember the reason I put out so much content, and I put out probably more content than anybody, I'm very, very consistent on that because I have a lot to say, I have an opinion on everything, so it's easy. But basically, I didn't have somebody like that, particularly because, how old are you? How old? 15. Like, at 15, I had fucking nobody to tell me, this is the way you should train, this is the way you should supplement, this is the way you should live your fucking life, So that's why I put a lot of that content out there, because I didn't have it. And I wanted it to be a case of be the change you wanted to see. So it's kind of led a lot of you here today. And that's just kind of giving you a little bit of a background into me. It might fuel a couple of questions. I'm sure you've got your own questions of, oh, I want to ask this about, branched chain amino acids or whatever the fuck. And you will do that. But even telling you my story, it might resonate or trigger a couple of things that might help you with your questions. So that's kind of why I just gave you a little bit of a background into me. A real short fucking summary of my life to date. As you know, it's all off the cuff. Everything, I don't plan shit. The closest I come to planning any of my content is like the podcast, where I'm like, oh, okay, well, I want to touch on this point and this point and this point. It's why I get in fucking trouble. Like, I'm not allowed to mention some companies because of that. Because I just press record in the video and I start talking. People are like, I love how you don't edit your videos. I'm like, I don't know how. It's fucking, that's where a lot of it comes down to. People are like, oh, that's amazing, you're so real. And I'm like, I just don't know how to work iMovie. So, and a lot of it is, so that's why the off the cuff works. I was a teacher, and it helped, because I had to teach lessons off the fucking cuff when you'd have like a head teacher or a principal walk in and you're like, oh shit, I've nothing planned. So a lot of it came from that. So they always say everything you do leads you on your path. So even if you're the most fucking extreme right-wing person or left-wing person on something, that's going to serve you to whatever it is that your life's path was meant to be, because everyone finds their way eventually. It's just a matter of when as opposed to if. So I'll open it up for questions, and I'll literally, any questions you have in any area, fitness, health, life, wealth, whatever the fuck you want to go in, we'll go down that way, and I'll literally just let you guys guide it, because that's how the Snapchat Q&As work. That's how everything I kind of do works, in terms of I'll go whatever supports you. There's no point me talking about this if you're like, I don't give a fuck about that. So I'll let you kind of open the floor. So any questions? Go for it. Just do it by raise a hand. We'll go old school teaching style. Terry.
Opinion on fasted cardio.
Okay, fasted cardio. Basically, on everything, in every training system, every cardio system, every nutritional style, there's no right or wrong way. A lot of it's going to be down to what works best for you. In terms of the science behind it, and I'm not going to go sprouting off fucking scientific quotes, but the largely fasted cardio doesn't really matter. You know, in terms of the scientific glucose, glycogen, body fat, in terms of how your body uses energy, technically fasted cardio should work better. But in any studies they do, it doesn't really matter. It's normally the cumulative effect of cardio altogether. Like, there's also arguments that it doesn't matter whether you do 60 minutes one day or 10 minutes for 6 days, that you'll get the same end result, and the studies will break it down. Personally, I think the best way fasted cardio works is when it works for your schedule. You know, if you find that you're like, well, I gotta get my cardio done, and I don't have time because I gotta go to fucking work, or I gotta go to school, or whatever it is, and you gotta get your cardio done, that's the best time to do your fasted cardio. The only thing I'd offer there is, I wouldn't do truly fasted cardio. Like, I think training truly fasted never really works if body composition is your goal. You know, there's context to everything, but if body composition is your goal and you want to be leaner, you want to be more muscular, you want to be bigger, whatever the body composition is, I would never do it truly fasted. You probably want to add in definitely some form of branched chain amino acids like leucine or BCAAs. Like, BCAAs are just basically leucine, isoleucine, and valine. Leucine is your fucking powerhouse. It's the thing that saves all your muscle, and the isoleucine and valine are like your fucking supporting strikers. Like I always say, they're like your fucking your Neymar and Suarez behind Messi. Like, they're literally just supporting your main striker. Leucine's your fucking powerhouse. So you could just supplement with leucine. But if you're trying to speed up fat loss, I would also add in some form of MCT oil, some form of medium chain triglyceride. MCTs are basically just your fats that your body will absorb instantly and very, very fast. Similar to like having something glucosey or like penny sweets or something that spikes your insulin. But MCT oil or medium chain triglycerides don't spike blood sugars, but they give you that feeling of having something sugary. So you can actually, particularly if you're doing HIIT fasted, like high intensity interval training, and you're doing sprints like 30-30 or whatever it is, I would never do that truly fasted without an MCT oil or some variation of that. So what I normally do with my online program and my online people, and I'll use my online, I've got two programs, my online program, which is my top 50 program, and my GA lean body program. I'll use them because they're context for reference points, because I use the best things for them program, so I'll make reference to them. But basically in the top 50 program, I normally have one of two options for people. If they're doing steady state cardio, I'll say, right, use your BCAAs or your leucine while you're training. And if they're doing HIIT cardio, I'm like, okay, take whey protein and an MCT oil or coconut oil or some form of MCT, and then use your BCAAs while you're training, and so that you're not truly fasted. Like, the reason HIIT works so well, apart from like the lipolysis, like HIIT will release fat from the cells, and then low intensity steady state, and the brakes on HIIT apparently is what burns through like the stubborn body fat, without getting into too much science on that. But the reason HIIT works so well is because of the intensity. But you don't have that intensity when you're fasted in the morning. So I would always add in something there. I would always add in an MCT oil or any variation of that. Like, I use the brain octane oil, which I'm probably just going to go back to regular coconut oil because I think it works more or less the same. But there's like concentrations of MCT. Like, the bottom is like butter. The next one up is MCT oil, and then there's like XCT oil and brain octane, which are all medium chain triglycerides. Your body will use them all for energy without spiking blood sugar. So basically means you get a better training session in, you'll burn more fat because MCT oil can metabolize fat, so you'll burn more fat, and you won't eat into your muscle stores when you're training, basically. Does that make sense? Yeah, awesome.
Obviously, we are listening to an awful lot of audiobooks, so how much of it do you actually retain, or what's the trick to, if you're reading 5 or 6 a week or listening to them?
Okay, yes, I listen to loads. I love audiobooks. I use the Audible app for anyone that doesn't use, because I get asked that a lot on Snapchat, the Audible app. I read probably 2-3 books every week, religiously. I'll normally listen to 2 books and I normally get through at least 1 physical book. I read in all of my spare time. In terms of retention, what I generally find, a couple of things for me here. One, the topics I'm the most curious about, I retain the most information, which makes sense. Like, if I'm reading a book on flowers, I ain't retaining shit about that. Like, I don't give a fuck the difference between a daffodil and a rose. But if I'm reading something about nutrition or mindset or business that interests me, I retain a lot more of that. So the key is reading books that are accessible, because if you can't take the nuggets of gold out of it, it's no good to anybody. And I found, it's funny, because I read a book last week, or I listened to a book when I was in London last week, The One Thing by Gary Kelleher. That's my second attempt at that book. I tried to listen to that book probably 6-7 months ago, and I only got halfway through, and I was like, this book's shit. But I listened to it the last day, and I was like, this is amazing, because I was at a different stage in my life to take in and consume the information. The messages in there meant nothing 6 or 7 months ago, but they fucking hit me hard this time round, you know? So that, sometimes that can happen with books. So even when I recommend people read, you know, Mastery or 48 Laws of Power or Awaken the Giant Within or whatever my favorite ones are, sometimes it's a case that your mind needs to be in a position to accept the information that's being presented to you. And I get that as somebody that was lived a very different lifestyle 2-3 years ago. Those books wouldn't have landed with me. You know, none of those self-help books or mindset books, they wouldn't have hit me, because I'm like, the fuck is this shit like? You know, where now it hits because I've got reference points from everywhere, you know? So I find generally sticking with book recommendations from people you trust is number one. It normally helps. Like I'm in a book club, so I'm in Ty Lopez's book club. He helps me, he's in LA. And I'm in his book club, and I'm going through his top 100 books at the minute. So I'm about 45, 46 books through, you know, when I'm working through his top 100. Because I followed 2 or 3, loved them, and was like, oh, these are all fucking good, you know? So I would start working through that list. So generally what I would do is somebody you trust. So if you trust me or other fitness people or other whatever areas you like, trust people's recommendations, you know? Particularly when you struggle with retention. I struggle with retention on books that I can't comprehend. Like, if I'm reading something, I'm like, I don't know what that fucking means. Like, I struggled with, and I quite like the book now, but Sigmund Freud's Civilization and Discontent is a hard book to fucking access. But there's nuggets of gold in there, but it took me a while to access it. Like, I would have read that book a year ago and I wouldn't have understood 2 words of it. But now I had 3 or 4 different books that corresponded to that, and I was able to take the nuggets of gold out of it. You know, the reality is, books, I love reading and I love books, and you can spot the teacher in me, because even though I read fuck all, when I was a teacher, like, I have a total of about 10 books that I read up until like a year and a half, 2 years ago. Which is like, and I've read fucking 10 books in the last 3 months now, like, you know, more, whatever, 2-3 a week, that adds up. My maths are shit, I'm like, so bad, you know. I'm a literacy English guy. But what I love so much about books is my last 18 months particularly, I've only changed, and I did a podcast episode that's going to go out before the new year. It was the top things I learned this year. And one of those tips that I put in there was, my whole life changed when I started reading more books and getting up earlier. Like, my entire life changed. Everything. Like, and they were born out of, getting up earlier for one, was born out of having Holly. You know, like, she gets up at around 9 o'clock, 7:30, 9 o'clock. So I get up at 5:30 to get my shit done before she wakes up. Like, and I hate, because I see it on social media and Instagram does my fucking head in. People are like, get up and rise and grind at fucking 5 a.m. You need to train at 5 a.m. And you're like, you don't. You can do shit at any time. Like, you know, it doesn't matter if you do it at fucking 5 a.m. or 5 p.m. or when you have your meals, or when you have, well, it doesn't matter when you have meals, but when you cook your meals, when you train, all of these things, none of that matters. Like, mine was born, like, you know, necessity is the mother of all invention. Like, I started getting up earlier because I had to get shit done. So I started getting up earlier, and what I found was that focused time when nobody else was awake, I got so much done. Like, that time between 5:30 and about 9 a.m., I get more done than I'd have done the whole fucking day before, because it's concentrated time. There's nobody else up. There's nobody else to distract me. I don't go on my social media. I don't go on any reactive work, and I do all my creative stuff first thing in the morning. Like, I literally get up and do my morning routine, which is an audiobook. That's why I tie it into it, because I get up and I do my my foam roll and my recovery strategy for my GA program, because into the next season, I do that recovery because I get really fucking tight because I was years I'm not doing it, and you know, I've been years of weight training, and that builds up if you don't fucking roll out and stretch, and I never did it, so now I'm doing it more. And I listen to my audiobook for 45 minutes every morning. So I actually get an hour of an audiobook because I set it to 1.25 or I set it to 1.5. So I actually get more, I get it done faster. And I do that every single morning. And my entire life started to change because two things happened. One, I was fresher in the morning and I was able to create more content. So all my podcasts, but the exception of the Snapchat Q&As, because they're reactive. Because people can ask me questions and I can react. But creative shit where you need to draw it from nothing, I find that period of first thing in the morning when you haven't got in touch with the rest of the world is when to do that. So I create my podcasts, all the videos that I do, blog posts that I write, the stuff with the book. Hopefully next year that got held off because the head of the marketing team died. God rest his soul, he was old, he had cancer. So that got held off. But all of that stuff, all the creative, I do first thing in the morning because I haven't had a chance for the world to start fucking shaking me around, you know? And even here, like I drove up here, and I normally always listen to audiobooks in the car, but I listen to music on the way up here because if I listen to an audiobook, those ideas are fresh in the top of my head and I'm starting to draw stuff from the book I'm listening to right now. So a lot of the things that I trigger, that's why I read in the morning, because if I read, you know, Awaken the Giant Within, which is a self-help book by Tony Robbins, I can do a blog post on that later because it's set my mind into that zone. You know, if I read a nutritional book, a Paul Chek nutritional book, it'll put my mind into, oh shit, I'll write an article about processed food or whatever it is. And it sets me up for the whole day. So those two things, and also my retention is so much better in the morning. That's what I learned from teaching. What do you do in the morning? You teach them the hardest subjects, always in the morning. You know, you do, with kids, they always say do your maths. In England it was numeracy and literacy. Do numeracy and literacy first thing in the morning because the kids are fresh and they retain more. And do all your arts and PE and stuff and the other subjects that aren't as important in the evening when the kids are getting tired. So I do that because I retain it in the morning. And I've also learned different learning styles. This is why I loved teaching, because it taught me so much about how to fucking learn and consume information. And effectively all I'm doing here is relaying back information that I've consumed and have put context to. That's everything I do. Anything you ever follow from me is literally just information that I've read or consumed. I've applied context from applying it somewhere in my life or in someone else's life, and I'm throwing it back out there. So teaching taught me that people learn in different ways. So the reason I didn't read so many books is because I'm not a very good reader. I'm not a great reader. It's a case that, like, I don't have dyslexia, but words get blurry on a page after a certain period of time, which is obviously a mild form of dyslexia in some way, shape, or form. But you just you suck it up and push past it. Now I suck it up and push past it. But that's why audiobooks fucking landed with me so well, because I couldn't concentrate. I found my mind, because I had really bad ADHD in school, I was in trouble all the time. Like, because I was a wiry little fucker. Like, and I was always in trouble because I couldn't concentrate. And then with books, I couldn't retain any of the information on anything I did because I couldn't focus. I'd be like reading a book on it was biographies and stuff that I started reading first, and I'd see a bird, or I'd see something shiny in the corner, and I'd start fixating, or I'd start thinking about my workout later that day, and I wasn't in the present reading the book. Audiobooks didn't do that. I consumed everything. If I read a book from front to cover, read it physically, I retain about 40%. I'm guesstimating the percentage, but for, let's say, 40%. If I listen to an audiobook, I retain about 70% of that, because that's my learning style. You know, I learn from listening to things, because everyone will learn in different ways, you know, visual, audio, kinesthetic, doing, but I'm a primary audio learner. I know that I will consume information from listening, you know. So audiobooks made perfect sense. Finding what works for you. And this is why I say to people, I love audiobooks, but audiobooks may not be the best for you. You know, the general recommendation I can give is if you listen to podcasts and you remember the podcast, try out audiobooks, because it's basically the same thing. You're just listening to the author's ideas as opposed to the podcast person.
Brian, your surroundings while you're listening to an audiobook,
I've tried everything. I did the Spartan race 3 years ago, which is fucking 20 miles. Oh, never again, I hate running. But 20 miles, and I trialed listening to my audiobooks while I ran, and I didn't remember it. You know, and then obviously as you learn more about the nervous system and where your blood is going, obviously your blood is going to your legs, so you're not going to have it in your brain to retain the information. As I learned more about the nervous system, I realized that didn't work. So I tried walking, I've tried listening to it in the car, I've done all of those things, and I'll do it regardless. Like generally, it's funny because I always have a set of headphones in, always. Like anywhere I ever go, like if anyone just didn't know me, they just assume I was listening to music, and I'm always listening to an audiobook, always. But I retain it. The best surroundings for me is walking at a light pace. Like, that's why I love traveling, because if I'm walking around London or Toronto, or I'm in New York next week, if I'm walking around a city and I have my audiobook in, I'm remembering a lot of that. You know, here it's not great because the weather's not as consistent, so you can't do it religiously. But I find walking with a slight, just casual walk and listening, I tend to retain the best. Now, I've read studies that your body will retain more because of its blood flow. You know, the blood flow through your body, and it's not excessive, and it's going to your brain, so you're obviously able to retain more information. Again, I don't know how true that is. Every study there is a fucking counter study. But I found for me, it's a case of context. Find what works for you, and then stick with that. You know, I've tried doing it at the cardio at the end of the gym. It's not as good for me, you know, because I'm fucked after my workout, so that doesn't work. But the first thing in the morning works great for me, and then walking around. Like I actually, the week before last, before I went to London, because it was so nice out, like it was cold, that bitter cold, I love that weather, and I was literally just went out for, you know, 90 minutes and did a walk around my block, you know, in Galway. I live just outside the city, and did a walk outside of it and just had the audiobook in, and I was like, oh, this is amazing. And I remembered it all. It was Sam Harris's book on lying and what happens to your brain neurologically when you lie, and I retained a lot of that because it works better for me. So kind of finding what works best for you. You know, there's no right or wrong way. Everyone is different, and this is with everything. Everything I say here, I love the Marcus Aurelius quote, that everything you ever hear is an opinion, and everything you ever see is a perspective. That's how everything is, like in life. So when people are talking shit about you, that's an opinion of that moment in time, you know, and I get it more than anybody. Like, I understand that the way that I am, I split a room. Like, people either love me or hate me, you know, and I'm fine with that. You know, when it's different when people don't meet you, but when social media, people love me or hate me, and I know that, because you just scroll through any of my comments on Facebook or Instagram, and they're a fucking dickhead. Like, you know, and I know that. And a lot of the way to deal with that is to understand that everything's an opinion and perspective. Like, that "you're a dickhead" comment is an opinion of that moment in time of the way they're feeling. Normally, any feeling anybody has towards you is a projection of themselves onto you. Any hate that people feel towards you, it's hate that's within them that is being projected onto you. You know, people have their own shit going on. You know, when people are being dicks to you and someone fucking bumps into you on the subway, or, you know, someone's being a dick in the gym and says, "That was my fucking bench." Like, people are going through their own shit. You know, they might have had a really bad day, and it's just being projected onto you. So when people write nasty comments or say nasty things, it's a projection of the way they're feeling. You know, it's an opinion and perspective of that moment in time. That's why it doesn't bother me. That's why I don't give a fuck. Like, because I'm like, oh, that's your shit. You go fucking deal with that. Like, you know. So it's one of those things that everything even I offer here is an opinion and a perspective of where I'm at right now. The reason I can offer that information about the audiobooks and you know, when to do it in the morning or how I listen to them is because this is my opinion right now. You know, opinions change. You know, like the more information that you give, like I love Charlie Munger. Charlie Munger was Warren Buffett, who's one of the richest men in the world, business partner. And he's like, you should give up one of your favorite, best loved ideas at least once a year. Because if you're not moving forward. You know, and I have done that. Like I talked about that in a podcast episode, how and you would have been a victim of this, because when you were working with me, I was a volume guy. I was like, volume. I was like, volume works for everybody. I was like, everyone should do 50 reps and 100 reps, you know. And I gave up that idea a year ago because I was like, oh, that doesn't fucking work for everybody. Like, you know, some people that doesn't work for, you know. So every year you should look back and give up one of your best loved ideas. You know, it's the people, because what happens is people get so caught and stuck to whatever their opinion is. Like we have cognitive biases in our brain. They're basically like shortcuts. There's 25 cognitive biases. They're shortcuts that your brain creates to like help you with life. One of them is a commitment bias, where you will find out, you'll make your opinion on something and then you'll find evidence to support it, you know. And that's what people do when people do it all. Like if you like somebody and then they do something really bad to you, you're like, oh no, but they're sound though. Like, you know, that's a commitment bias. That's a cognitive bias. It's an evolutionary thing that your brain has evolved over time. Yeah, I'm going to do your own next.
How does that work? I appreciate obviously that.
Start that again now, because I missed the start of that.
Just about your opinions and bias and how things change, and I appreciate the nature of business is things do change. But as a coach, how do you take into account, or do you take into account your longevity of life and how all of it works towards when you're 50, 60 years of age, and you know, food quality, etc., etc. Like, how do you take all that into account when you're working with someone now at a young age, or even someone who's like, you know, really stuck on fat loss right now? When you turn around to them and go, okay, now you can't be fat loss for all of your life, you need to do something else. How do you take that into account? And do as constantly as they do in this business?
Okay, I'm going to give a couple of things on that one. Good question. No, I get the question. In terms of what I found, I'm going to offer what I found has worked best and what I think is possibly the best thing. What I found has worked best for people in terms of you're asking people that get obsessed on the fat loss, that everything's fat loss, and the goal nearly never changes. Is this that their opinion never changes on this is how I want it? That comes, what I found the best, and this is why I love working with people. It's why I love my online program, because it allows me to reach more people at a whole. Because the fitness industry is broken. Like, you know, the fucking shit's broken. Like, you know, there's so much contradictory evidence. Like, there's a podcast episode coming out, I think Monday week. I was talking about how we're drowning in information and starved for knowledge in the fitness industry. That by right, with the internet, none of us, hands up who's a PT or a fitness instructor. Like, by right, none of us should have a fucking job. Like, the internet should be taking care of it for us. But we'll always have a job because there's so much information out there. And when there's so much information, people get drowned in it. And what happens with the information is, because of all the different fat loss things that people, options they have, their mindset never changes because they want to try the next thing. This is where fad diets come from. And then they build off, you know, people constantly trying to lose weight and lose body fat. But in terms of what I found has worked best with people is finding the why and serving the deeper, why do you feel that way? They always say if you ask why 3 times, you'll find the answer to something. Like, so if you have somebody that's like, well, why do you want to lose fat? They're like, well, I want to look better. So why do you want to look better? Because I want to be able to fit into a nicer dress. Why do you want to fit into a nicer dress? Because I want to look good at my staff party. Why do you want to look good at your staff party? Because there's a guy there I like. It's like, okay, it's a partner you want. Like, and that's where you find the deeper question with people, and then you can serve that, because that then's not about fat loss. That's about giving them confidence so that they can approach that person. Like, it's funny because people, particularly when I was in that fitness side of industry, people assume, and I'll use myself as a reference point because you're your own best reference point in every story because you've got perspective from where you are. People will assume when you're a fitness guy, you love fitness chicks or fitness girls, fit chicks. Like, they assume that that's what you will be into. And I don't personally like that look on a girl. Like, that stage look, I massively appreciate the dedication it takes to get there. Like, and there's something sexy about the hard work that went into getting into that shape. But I don't think that shape is sexy. And that's a case that some girls, I assume you have someone in mind that you're thinking of. Girls in particular, women, this is both genders, but women, I'll serve it because I think I assume it's a woman you're talking about. In general, it's just in general, like, we'll think that if the deeper question is they want to attract this guy or they want to be, you know, look better so they can have the confidence. Again, it comes down to confidence, you know, because the way you look is an opinion. That's a perspective. Like, everyone's got, you know, tastes, you know. Some guys like bigger girls, some guys like skinny girls, some girls like jacked guys, some girls like tall guys, short guys, whatever. Like, that's the case that it's not, if that's the deeper reason for the fat loss, then she's never going to be right because she's never going to be losing enough body fat. She's never going to be lean enough. But I guarantee, and how many people, particularly the fitness people here, have worked with somebody, or if you're this person who went train, got into a relationship, was like, I don't need to train anymore. Because your why, whether you knew it or not, may have been to attract somebody. You know, somebody you know, or somebody down the line, or attract a higher mate, or whatever it is, you know. And when your why changed, fitness didn't matter. You needed to either change your goal and work towards something else, or you stop training. And that's what happens with people. So sometimes finding the deeper why can allow you to serve your client or whoever it is you're working with better, or your friend or whoever. You know, that's why I have a bit of an issue with things in the fitness industry, because of all the body dysmorphia and all the shit that no one fucking talks about. Like, I have an issue with that because there's something deeper rooted always there, and I get it as someone who was there. Like, I hated the fucking way I looked when I competed, you know, and I didn't have massive body image issues for a long period, and then I kind of went into it. When I started competing, that fucking skyrocketed. So when people go, oh, I'm going to compete for a show because I'll feel more confident and I'll look better, then I'm like, no, you fucking won't. Like, I was like, you're going to feel so much worse. I was like, if you're insecure now, I was like, wait until you're fucking 5% body fat and you need to be 4. And you want to be 3 then when you're 4. Like, because that's how it is. Like, I hated the way I fucking looked. And then I had to ask myself, why? Because I was letting everybody's opinion, because it was a judge, it's a subjective sport. I was like, well, I don't look, because fucking so-and-so looks better on Instagram, or so-and-so looks like this on Facebook. I need to look like them. I need to be bigger. I need to be more ripped. I need to be whatever. Like, and the real question was, why the fuck did I feel that way? And when I learned why, it was a missing, this is where my daughter changed my life, because I was missing something clearly, and then she came in and filled that gap, and I was like, I don't need to look like this. What the fucking difference does it make? I'm not changing the world by having fucking 6-pack or 8-pack. It doesn't help anybody. Like, that's why I don't put up a fucking ab selfie every day. Like, for that exact reason. But she helped change my why. She filled a void that was obviously deeper in me, and I don't know where I'd have gone had she not come along. Like, I'm a universe guy, so I believe it was always going to happen, but I don't know where my life would have gone had it not, because I'd have just kept going down that road and fucking trained myself into a fucking early grave, probably, you know? But it's a case of finding the deeper why, and that goes for everything. Everything. Ask yourself the question 3 times, or ask your client or friend or partner 3 times. Find the deeper why, and then try and serve that, because that's about confidence. If she starts to feel she looks better, if it's a girl we're using, just to say we have an avatar, and she feels she looks better and she can approach the guy she likes, or when guys come and talk to her, like I've worked with girls who literally would like shy away when they'd see a guy, and after 6 months of working with them, they're fucking walking around, and it helps. This is why I like guy trainers, particularly like, you know, fucking handsome fucking guy trainers, because girls that don't have confidence, communicating daily with somebody that quote unquote looks better, that's a perspective, looks are a perspective and opinion, can give you the confidence, because then when they go out, they're able to talk to other guys who quote unquote don't have 6-pack and look jacked. So they feel better about themselves. And sometimes that's where a personal trainer comes in great, as opposed to the actual physical sessions. It's the confidence they're giving by realizing that everybody's the same, whether you are a fucking subjective 10 out of 10 or a subjective 1 out of 10 or whatever it is. Everybody's got a fucking mind. Everybody's got the way they are, and the way they look is just what society has said, well, this is attractive. Who the fuck is that? Who would give you that reason? Because you've got abs, you're attractive? Like, you know, we're taking the evolutionary stuff out of it. Of course, there's evolutionary stuff that the reason women are attracted to guys with abs and hairy chests and stuff is a sign of more testosterone, which means they can procreate with you quicker. That's, anyone read Evolutionary Psychology of the Mind by David N. Buss? He's a Harvard professor. Fucking awesome book on evolutionary psychology. But that's basically it, you know. But I would find the why. Does that make sense? Does that answer the question, kind of? Cool.
Is in relation to like plateauing and metabolic adaptation / damage. I suppose basically just for myself, I find that for years now I've been like doing certain programs, invested time and money, and I'm going to give like 110% both food and training, and yet it's minimal results every time. And I suppose it kind of, there comes a point where you're like, what is it, like why do I, like it only go, it's the results are always minimal, and like they are proper trainers, it's like
Minimal to, I'm only asking this because it's going to give you a bit more perspective on the situation. Minimal to you, or like as in your expectation is higher and it's not meeting the expectation, or is it literally you're just physically not really changing, and like your friends and stuff will say, look, you look good, but you're not really changing?
yeah, I'd say that just the change, there won't be significant enough
Okay.
changes, and I just wonder like what's going wrong.
Okay, a couple of things on that as well. What I find that plateauing, sometimes it comes down to the person's expectation as well. It's very important to have a realistic expectation of where you can go. But because it sounds like you've gone through different training cycles and different cycles of nutrition and stuff, that you've been there and you've grinded at it for a while. But so the expectation was probably in alignment because you've done a lot of different things. So I'm assuming that the expectation was high and you kept trying different things and you still didn't get the progress you wanted. Sometimes I find that this is where context comes in as key, because progress, you need to find the different things that work for you and then double down on those things. You know, like if I was to add the third thing that has changed my life the most is find the things that work and then double the fuck down on them. Basically mean, you know, when you go to Vegas and you're fucking doubling down, you're chucking all your chips on the thing that works. You know, that's doubling down. So when you find a nutrition strategy that works, you stick with that and you use that. You can experiment with other things. Like I always say, like I've got my systems that I like. Like I like my spacing meals. Anyone that follows me, you know I like keeping blood sugar stable, cut out processed food, give your body no reason to hold on extra fat by digesting shitty ingredients. But like, they're the things that I like. So this is the systems that I always like.
but I'll experiment with keto for a week, or I'll try IFYM, or I'll try 80-20, but I'll always come back to the thing that I know works for my lifestyle and works for my body. So it's finding for example, if you say nutrition, it's finding the nutritional strategy, the foods, the systems, the layouts, the timings that works for you and has given you the best progress and is the one you can stick to. And then merging in, so you might find you work with so-and-so in London, and he gives you a nutritional plan that works great. You're like, okay, this is my fucking nutritional plan, but the training program is shit. And then you get another training program from someone in Sligo, and you're like, oh, this training system worked amazing. High volume, my body just changes, or fasted cardio, my body changes, or whatever it is. And then you start doubling down and combining the things that work, because everything's context. Like and I'll use myself again as in my own, because you're your own best example. The reason I don't do as many photo shoots and stuff anymore because I just fucking don't. That side of the industry, I'm like, I don't want to work with you. You're a fucking sleazy photographer. But I know the reason I was able to get ready for photo shoots. I got a photo shoot in London last year, and I got ready for it in 3 days because I know what will work for my body. I know if I add in fasted cardio, double up my weight training sessions, drop my carbs to 0, I will just shred up in a space of a week. Because I know that works for me. But I can't give that to somebody else. I can't say you do that and you'll shred in a week, because that might not work for you. I've talked in other posts and stuff about how some people work better off carbs, some people work better off fats, and you tweak it and you maneuver your body around what works best for you. Like if you're somebody that works amazingly well off carbohydrates, doing a high-fat diet probably isn't going to be the best for you long-term and be sustainable for you. If your body needs carbohydrates, this is how you know. Like drop your carbs to like 50 grams or 0 grams, and if you're walking around like a fucking zombie, you probably metabolize carbs pretty well. If you feel amazing, you're probably a fat person. Like I can drop my carbs to 0 and I feel incredible, because my body metabolizes fats better. But there's other people, Paul, who's one of my head trainers, he's going off on his own things now, he was in my mentorship, and Paul's a carb person. Like, you drop his carbs to 0, you can't have a conversation with him. Like, because he runs better off carbohydrates. So sustainable long-term, one of my favorite ever quotes is from Charlie Munger again. He's one of my favorites. Anyone that follow my Snap, you'd have seen Charlie's Almanac. Fucking awesome. But step by step, you get ahead, but not necessarily in fast spurts. Like, that's something that has served me so well in the last year. But you also have to have the ladder against the right wall or the right system in place. So it's a case of nearly being a scientist and experimenting with different systems and different nutrition and different training, and then combining or working with somebody who can combine it. A lot of my strength, particularly my online program, comes from taking, because I have the program is set with different things, and then the Q&As in the Facebook group, we tailor it depending on what works best for each person, because every context is different. I can't say, here's my training program that's going to work great for you, and give Terry the same one, because it doesn't work that way. But I can give you structures, and then I can work around, well, you might work better off higher carbs, you'll work better off, bumping up your vitamin D because your testosterone is low, or whatever, context. So it's nearly a case of experimenting with different training, different nutrition, different supplements. The ones that work, keep them as your base always and double down on those, and then keep experimenting with different things and just apply everything that works. I know a body part's a good example. My physical body responds to volume in everything. My legs, my back, if I do a DTP program, which is basically a 50, 40, 30, 20, 10, 10, 20, 30, 50, 40, 50 pyramid, down and up, I explode. But my chest doesn't, because my chest only responds when I go heavy. It was why I was such a weak body part for years, because I used to do volume on my chest and it didn't respond and it wouldn't grow. But if I go 6-8 reps, it grows. But every other body part is volume. But that took me years. I'm 16 years training. That took me probably 14 years to find out. So it doesn't happen overnight, and there'll be different body parts that respond to volume, different body parts that respond to lower weight, different nutrition systems that work well, carbs might work well, fats might work well, green tea extract L-carnitine may not work for you, and I love green tea extract L-carnitine for people. I'm like, yeah, they won't fuck up your central nervous system, they'll help metabolize fat, but other people will work better off, a different supplement or whatever it is, so it's a case of experimenting with it and trial and error. And the only other thing I'll offer is, the biggest, and this is why I love fitness and I hate fitness, and there's parts of me that love it and hate it. I love what fitness gives you. I love the outlet and the detox from life and the serotonin, dopamine, and all the great stuff that come with it. But sometimes when we throw ourselves into fitness, we stop seeing what everybody else sees. You know, like I look at everybody in this room and you all look amazing to me. Like you're all in good shape, you know, good looking people, probably great ideas in your own minds, but you never focus on the shit you have that's good. You know, I worked with a girl once, and she was a really, really attractive girl, really pretty girl, and she had big arms. And she was like, my fucking arms. And I was like, the 98% of you looks amazing. I was like, and that's just a look thing. You know, she was a really intelligent girl, she was a really nice girl, great to be around, but she couldn't see anything else but her arms, because that's what she didn't like. You know, our mind is designed by evolution to focus on negative things. You know, I've talked about this before. It's why I hate the fucking news, because the news is all negative. Because why does people watch the fucking news? Because it's all car crash shit that's there, because that's what our mind's determined to do. Like if you think back evolutionary, and this is why I love evolution, because the reality is there's a why for everything you do. Every way you think, every opinion you have is something that has evolved over time. You are literally a byproduct of ancestors from fucking thousands of years ago that had to evolve a certain way in order for you to be here. Because if they didn't have a negative opinion of their environment and missed a fucking saber-toothed tiger in the fucking woods, they were killed and they didn't procreate. So you're not a fucking offspring of them, you know? But the ones that developed to focus on the negative environment, you know, that they could see Russell in the fucking bush or whatever it is, that negative, oh, that could be a tiger, kept them alive. So they passed those genes on, you know? And that's why everything you have now, envy is my favorite one. Like envy is an evolutionary trait that's been passed down. Envy served people thousands of years ago, because if you were a fucking caveman and saw another and you have a beautiful woman on your side and fucking meat here, I got envious of you and went out and got a woman and meat, survived, passed on my genes, and now you have it, you know? Envy is an evolved feeling. So when you're envious of somebody else, that's been passed down to you. The way you feel is evolutionary. It's the same thing as a negative feeling. The focus on the arms that she didn't like was because she's been evolved and fucking designed to focus on the negative things. That's why when you can take yourself away from that and understand that that's how everybody is, and everybody does it, we all do it, you know? Like, because people will comment, Irish people are the worst, we're the worst for taking a compliment. Like, we can't take a compliment. It's like, oh, I fucking love your dress. Oh no, I love your dress. Like, you know, as opposed to saying, oh, thanks. Like, you know, we just can't accept it or receive the fucking compliment, because we're so focused on the things that we don't like. You're like, oh no, it's nothing, it's cheap, I got it from Pennies. Like, you know, and them guys were the same, you know? Like, you know, it's, oh, you look fucking great, oh geez, I'm in my off season. Like, you know, or whatever it is. And that's down to us not being able to focus on the positive, when the reality is there's so many amazing things that you have. When you can focus on those, the body will take care of itself. Like, you know, that's one of the biggest, and this is where my love-hate with the fitness industry comes, because we're such by nature, narcissistic's a strong word, but it's the most appropriate word in terms of, we go into the gym and we look at ourselves. Like, I've worked with people and clients, and any trainers in here, take this tip, because it's the fucking golden piece of information to give to clients. When you're working with someone that doesn't like the way they look, and I've worked with girls, I've worked with an overweight girl, she was overweight, she wouldn't take off her hoodie in the gym. She was like, oh, everyone's looking at me. I was like, look around. I was like, look at that guy over there, he's looking at his abs in the mirror. Look at her, she's looking at her glute form. I was like, everybody's focused on themselves. I was like, no one's looking at you. You know, because they're so fucking focused on how they look. And that's so liberating and freeing. When you're worried about where you go, people are so worried about themselves, they don't give a fuck how you look. And that's so freeing when you go into any gym, particularly people that have that barrier of a gym first. They're like, oh no, everyone will be looking at me. I'm like, they're not. I was like, people are looking at themselves. Like, you know, and that's really, really freeing. You know, when you have that feeling that focus on your positives, because if you don't, who's going to do it? You know, and you're giving that power to somebody else. And that's fine if you've got a great circle and network of people. You know, and they're saying, look, you look amazing, or, you know, you look great, or whatever it is, and they're giving you that. But do you really want to give that power to somebody else when that could come from within you? You know, hope that helps. Metabolic conditioning. Sorry.
What supplements would you say are the best for muscle growth?
Assuming everything is on par diet-wise and nutrition-wise, I think, for me, obviously a whey protein, but going away from a whey, I nearly put protein and whey protein, and I'm actually using rice protein at the minute. I can use that as food, because I think it's so closely related to food. In terms of supplements, I think leucine and I think creatine. Like, I think leucine's your fucking powerhouse. Like, if you read the research on leucine, which is the main ingredient in branched chain amino acids, everything comes from that. Like if you're on a cut, leucine is going to keep your metabolism high because it's going to preserve the muscle you have. If you're on a bulk, quote unquote bulk, with calorie surplus, when I say cut bulk, I mean calorie deficit, calorie surplus. More calories, less calories. If you're on a calorie surplus and you want to build muscle, leucine is going to support anabolism in the body. It's going to trigger all the things that allow your body to build more muscle.
Where would you get it?
Anywhere. You should be able to get leucine discount supplements, vitamin shop, health stores. Branched chain amino acids are mainly leucine. They're normally 211, some are 811s, but most that's why branched chain amino acids. But it's leucine is the reason it's so good. But that's why branched chains are so important. Like people will spend a fortune on supplements, and I've spent a fucking fortune, God knows, over the years on supplements. But there's a couple that you're just like, use that and use a lot of it, you know? Like you're way better off if you're trying to build muscle, maybe creatine as well, but having branched chain amino acids and having it in the morning, before, during, after training and before bed, than getting 10 other fucking amino acids. Because that's the one, double down. Double down on the one that works, the most scientifically backed. I've applied it with people. That's why I have context. You know, so you're using the scientific results from it, but you're also applying it to people. Leucine, the next is creatine.
I got that, but I was just actually, the next question I was going to ask you, I've taken it with the glucose because I got the monohydrate one, but it made me sick. And I wasn't even able to finish the workout.
Yeah, glucose is there.
That's why I thought it was the glucose. I haven't taken it since, as I said, I must ask you.
Yeah, creatine shouldn't give you any digestive discomfort. If it is, you're possibly dehydrated and it's pulling water into the muscle and pulling it away from, and it's giving you a cramp. But I would doubt that. It's unlikely it's that. That's a really rare case. But it's for people that don't know how to train and just take creatine because they want to get like this. I'm like, that's not how it works. But I would go with, I'm actually experimenting now. Everything's experimenting. Like this is everything I do is an experiment. So I'll experiment with different supplements. I'll experiment with different nutrition training. But I'm experimenting now with the biocreatine, which is fenugreek and pink Himalayan salt that transports the monohydrate into the muscle. A1. It's class. I've used ethyl ester, which I quite like. Creatine ethyl ester, which is basically the ethyl ester is the ester attached that allows it to be transported into the muscle without it. It tastes like fucking dick. Like it's fucking. I don't know what dick tastes like, but I assume that's what it's fucking. You know, like that's. But it tastes horrible, basically. Like, you know. So, but a little bit of my wadi, and it works fine. You know, but that biocreatine is working great. I'm taking that now. Now I blow up on creatine, like, because I eat fuck all red meat. So as soon as some people aren't creatine responders. If you eat a lot of red meat, you're probably not going to respond as well to creatine as somebody that doesn't eat any red meat. You know, like I take creatine and I go poof. Like I didn't take it last week because I was in London, but it works really quickly for me. And I've seen it on people where they'll respond really, really quickly to it. And others that are like, no, it's not working. You know, and then you'll hear them and they're like, oh yeah, well I eat steak 3 times a day. I'm like, oh, well, that's why. Like, so that and then beta-alanine is your third one. They're your 3. Leucine, creatine, and beta-alanine. Beta-alanine is one of my favorite supplements for most people. It's the shit that gives you the skin tingles. So like the first time you take beta-alanine, you feel like your face is burning or your skin is itching. Like I remember, I don't fucking ever, because I used to train in the Clarion up here in the Clarion Hotel, because I used to live in the Clarion when I was a student in Sligo. And I remember the first time I started taking it was Purple Rat, which was like an intra-workout amino acid drink, and it had beta-alanine in it. And I remember going to the gym for about a week. I was like, fucking this all through my workout. And I changed my fabric softener, I changed my clothes, I started bringing 2 or 3 t-shirts, thinking it was something in my clothes. And then I realized it was the fucking beta-alanine that was making my skin tingle. So people get freaked out and think they've overdosed on something when they take it first. But your body becomes accustomed to that over time. You know, and what beta-alanine does is it buffers lactic acid. So lactic acid is basically what's going to stop you training. Like that, like really intense pain of like flush. Say you're doing legs is a good example because you get a lactic acid buildup and like you can't even flex the muscle. That's lactic acid. Beta-alanine buffers that, so it means that you can do more reps or you can do more sets or you can do heavier weight and you won't get the lactic acid build up as quick. So it buffers that, and there's also been reports to say that it'll uptake creatine better. So you put the 2 of them together and they become like sister supplements. But for muscle building, they're your 3, leucine or branched chain amino acids, creatine and beta-alanine. They're the 3 in my muscle building of my online program. There's other ones like health and sleep supplements, but they're the 3 muscle building ones. But there's loads of others, but they're the best in my opinion.
Is it cycle creatine?
I don't. I do by accident because I don't take it with me when I travel. So I effectively cycle it. I've never found I have, because when I was training seriously first and started first taking supplements, the first supplement I ever took I think was glutamine and then creatine, because all whey protein used to make me sick. So I was like 22 before I found a protein that didn't make me sick. So when you're 15 wondering if you use protein, it's like you can do fine without it, because I did fine with food, because food is key. But the cycling it, I never cycled it and never became overly respondent to it. I always found that, it was funny because when I came off it, I found my strength would always drop slightly. And I never trained for strength, but I'd noticed that I'd go from picking up 20s to picking up 17.5s, you know? So I generally don't cycle it, as long as you don't have a kidney issue, because obviously excess creatinine will go to the kidneys, it can fuck up your kidneys. So if you have one kidney, don't take creatine. But assuming you're taking within the recommended doses and you don't have any pre-existing condition or issue, you shouldn't need to cycle it. It's the same as cycling red meat, you know, effectively. You know, that's the way I always look at it. Like creatine is just, it's in red meat, it's naturally occurring in red meat, so it'll be the same as cycling your red meat, you know, so that's kind of the way I look at it. Again, obviously it's different because it's coming from a different source, but as someone that hasn't cycled it and found all the benefits and had no issues ever, like I used to get my bloods done, I get my bloods done, I get them done way less now because my health is really good now, but they always came up fine. You know, because I had fucking health issues even when I was younger with, you know, I used to get headaches and shit like that. But that works really, really well. Does that make sense?
Yeah.
Awesome.
If at the end of the day it's calories in versus calories out, why would people do like loads of cardio? Can they like gain fat like marathon running?
Say that again?
So like, you know, people do it and like loads of cardio, like say training for marathons and stuff. Like
Yeah.
why does people gain fat if they don't actually lose?
Your body's fucking amazing. Like, shit, I'm fucking jumping around the place. Your body's fucking amazing. Like, this is what I love, because you can say all the fucking things you want about calories in, calories out, keeping blood sugar stable, all these things, but your body is going to respond the way it's going to respond. So I've seen marathon trainers that have bellies, some that are out of shape, but are amazingly aerobically fit. You know, it's a different system that firstly, it's a different system their body's going into. If you're really, really aerobically fit, like a marathon runner is, you may never go into your anaerobic zone or your creatine phosphate zone or another zone. You may always be aerobic. So your body may be actually never tapping into fat stores. You know, and that's what happens with a lot of marathon runners. I find ones that hold body fat, particularly the ones that like hold their stomach body fat, because that's a large problem, because they normally drop it everywhere else. Because you've got the body fat you hold in your stomach is like your visceral and your subcutaneous fat. So your sub-Q is the fat you can pull, and your visceral fat's your fat over your organs. That's the shit that's like staying there. So what happens with people is your body will start to take it, like if that's your stubborn area, your body nearly needs to take it from everywhere else first. So what will happen is you'll get leaner in your arms, you'll get leaner in your glutes, you'll get leaner in your legs. And then if you keep step by step, you get ahead, not necessarily in fast spurts, your body will eventually start to take it from the stubborn areas. It'll start to take it from its visceral fat, and then it'll start to take it from the subcutaneous fat. So the key, what I've found with a lot of people, I'm going to come back to that now because this kind of all ties in, is the key with a lot of people when they are trying to get their body fat down is if you're never tapping into your visceral and stubborn body fat, visceral or subcutaneous, you're never going to get that part of your body down. This is why competitors, particularly people that have been to a very, very low level of body fat all over, can keep that pretty low because they never top up those stores that high again, if that makes sense. So what happens with people is if you've been eating fucking shitty foods for 10 years and drinking too much and all of this stuff, and then you start to train for 3-4 years and you still can't get rid of that last bit, your body's still got 10 years of fucking visceral fat built up there, you know? So it's going to take time before it starts to eat into that. What happens with competitors then when they drop really, really low is they don't have that 10-year build up again. So the fat they add is subcutaneous fat, which means they can drop it again because it's not fucking fat under the organs. So what happens with a lot of marathon runners and people that do a lot of aerobic stuff is they never get that body fat chipped away at. And then it's a case of nearly maintenance, that they're getting fitter, because you can get fitter and still have body fat. You know, like you look at like some top athletes or marathon runners that aren't necessarily in amazing physical shape subjectively, but they're fit as fuck. Like, and that's what happens to them, because you can get aerobically, particularly aerobically, you can get aerobically very, very fit. That's why CrossFit works really well for girls, and works for guys too. Like, I'm not a lover hater of CrossFit. I do CrossFit and I do every sort of training, but it's why it works really well for girls, because you're jumping in different energy systems. A lot of girls go from running, and I'm not rubber stamping this with everyone, but a lot of girls go from running as their background into, say, CrossFit, and then they start to like change all shape because they've gone from always training aerobically to now jumping into different energy systems. They're jumping anaerobic, aerobic. Like, that's why guys don't respond as well, because we normally go in and start jacking up weights as soon as we fucking go in. So they don't respond as well to CrossFit. They respond amazingly, but in context to a girl. Like, how many girls, like, went CrossFit and then got really fucking great shape because they're constantly jumping between different systems, depending on the CrossFit, because some CrossFit's fucking stupid. Like, but some of it's brilliant, same as everything, Like, it's the same with bodybuilding. There's stupid parts of bodybuilding. Like, you take the best from everything and then just merge it all together, Does that kind of make sense, jumping in the different zones? Awesome.
What kind of supplements would you recommend for teenagers?
For teenagers?
Doing a lot of explosive work.
What's your sport? Do you do a sport or just basketball? How old are you?
16.
16. Oh yeah, you look like a basketballer, you're tall. Yeah, that makes sense. I personally don't think you need any yet. Nutrition is key, but it is important that you get your nutrition nailed on. Like, that's the biggest mistake I find, and I have way more teenagers following me than I realized until like I start to see the fucking Facebook insights and Instagram insights. I'm like, whoa, there's fucking loads of teenagers following me. I just didn't assume, because it's funny, you should never assume. Assumptions of the mother of all fuck ups. But, I just didn't assume and then I started putting out more content for like, right, this is what you need to do, is get your nutrition on point. What will happen there is your body is at its peak state. It's going into its peak state over the next few years. Like, your testosterone's fucking jacked through the roof. Like, I can only imagine like what fucking, because I remember, any guy that was the teenage years, you remember those fucking years, like, where you were just, your natural test levels and everything were just skyrocketing. So you don't even need to support that with leucine, creatine, beta-alanine, glutamine, all of these things, because it's naturally very jacked up. But it's very important to get your nutrition on point, because for you it's recovery, particularly with your explosive work and for basketball, and because you're in a primarily aerobic sport with probably anaerobic bursts for explosiveness. It's very, very important that you get your nutrition on point so that you're keeping glycogen stores full, carbohydrates, good complex carbohydrates, because the energy systems are your glucose, your glycogen, your body fat, like basic 101, glucose, carbs you've eaten, the last couple of meals, glycogen, the carbs you've eaten over 48 hours, body fat that's stored, just really, really breaking it down. But you want to always keep your glycogen stores topped up, because you never want to, as a sports person, you never want to tap into your body fat as a fuel source, because if you start tapping into body fat as a fuel source, during games particularly, and during training when it's important, it's a shit energy source, Fine for body composition, and I get a lot of my people that want to look better tap into those stores. That's why if you followed, you follow my programs, you know the system where you literally do your training and then your cardio at the end is like, oh fuck, you're dead because you've tapped into fat stores. But that's why you get so much results, because your body's using that as a fuel source, because I've depleted your glycogen, and that's why it works. You don't want that to happen. So in terms of getting your nutrition on point, that's the most important. So what you may find even down the line is a carbohydrate supplement might support you if you can't eat those complex carbs. But I generally find brown rice, oats, sweet potato, the normal ones tend to work really well. White potatoes and stuff are fine as well. I just prefer the complex ones because of the fiber. Next year, 17, 18, then a whey protein is all you're going to need for a long period of time, and then maybe some creatine. I started using supplements at probably 21, creatine, glutamine, those ones. Probably around 2021. I've only got a protein at 22 because they all made me fucking sick. I have a pretty sensitive stomach, and I was really bad when I was in my early 20s, hence the fucking stomach ulcer, which probably didn't have, now that I think of it, maybe there's a combination, causation, correlation, but that's what I would do, and then add in your whey protein and creatine, and then as you go along, leucine, beta-alanine, things like that. The thing is with supplements, this is for everybody in the fucking room. There's the foundations, bread and butter ones that will work, and then there's everything else. it blows my mind. It doesn't blow my mind because I was this fucking idiot that like bought every new supplement that came out, fat burner fucking 5,000 or weight gainer fucking 7 million, because it was like, you know, a big jack bodybuilder on the front or a fucking sliced up fitness model. I'm like, oh, I want to look like them, I'll buy this, thinking that's what it did, you know, when the reality is it's the fucking basics. You can go through your entire life, and particularly from a health point and a longevity point, and the step by step you get ahead is your whey protein, your branched chain amino acids, and then different ones that work. I love green tea extract, L-carnitine, beta-alanine, glutamine, your branched chains, you know, and then your health ones, your vitamin B12, you know, things that your body's probably going to be deficient in. Like, all of these things make a massive difference, but otherwise you're just paying 60 quid because fucking, you know, Phil Heath or someone, big massive bodybuilders on the cover. Like, you know, and that's what happens with supplements. That's why I was there, I was sponsored. Like, and the only reason you're sponsored is because you make an association. Cognitive bias, there's an association bias. We all do it. You know, it's why celebrities get paid massive deals to do endorsements on a perfume or an aftershave, because it's an associated bias. You think consciously, you know that you got paid, but subconsciously you're thinking, well, if I use that, I'll look like them. You know, because and the advertising plays off that. And that's why people get sponsored. So never buy a supplement based on, oh, well, fucking so-and-so says use this one because so-and-so's paid to fucking say to use that one, you know? Like, this is why I used to have so much problems with my sponsors, because like, I remember one time, and they were brilliant, disclaimer, they were brilliant. Like, Amex were my sponsor for years, and they were brilliant. Like, I loved them, they were so good, and I used some of their products, but I remember one time, they asked me to use this supplement that they'd brought out, and it fucking tasted like shit, and it made my stomach sick. And they were like, oh, well, you do a review on this one. And I was like, okay, I'll do the review, but I've used it, it made me sick and I thought it was shit. And I'm going to say that. And they're like, oh, just do Rico or green tea or whatever. And I was like, okay, cool. So, but you don't always have that. It's why I don't have a supplement sponsorship now, and I get approached every week. You know, I'm not even exaggerating, because supplement companies will do that. They'll approach anybody with a certain following because of the associative thing that comes with it, you know. So it's a case of don't ever buy a supplement based on this person said they use it, because they might not. Like, I have friends in the fitness industry that are supplements that's sponsored by massive companies, and they're like, I don't use any of their products. I'm like, I'm getting paid a wage, or they're getting paid in whatever it is from them. You're like, so just be aware of that down the line. Because I got caught at your age and your age, because I was like, when I started to get older, I was like, oh, I'm going to use this because so-and-so uses it. They mightn't, you know, so just be wary of that. Stick with your fundamentals. Nutrition, number one, and then your basic supplements that will support you, and then there you're going to be your bread and butter. That make sense?
Yeah.
Awesome.
Thanks.
Yeah.
Is it possible to train for a marathon without holding on to the muscle and putting on muscle, and without affecting performance in football?
Oh, you have a lot of fucking things there. Okay, I'll give you my example first, because I've got good context on this from myself. I did the Spartan race, which was 20 miles. What's the marathon? 26.3 or whatever it is. So it was 20 miles. So I was doing 15, 20K runs 3-4 times a week. I, at the time, thought I lost all my muscle. What happened was I had obviously depleted my glycogen so much, because the week after the Spartan race, I did about 6 weeks of 3-4 times a week. I was doing 15 to 20K runs, and I was cycling to and from school, which was 8 miles each way. Whatever the conversion is on miles and kilometers. And so I was doing a lot of cardio, and I was lean, and I felt like I was shrinking. But about a week or 2 weeks after, I went right back to the size I was at, because I started eating, my training volume dropped down. So at the time, as I was coming in, I'm like, I'm getting tiny, like, because that's how I felt, because I was so flat. You know, all the glycogen in the muscle was obviously depleted. And then 2 weeks after the Spartan race, I'd gone right back to where I was. So I actually hadn't lost any muscle. I'd obviously just flattened out, because you don't lose. If you lose muscle that quickly, you're not going to put it on that quickly. You know, in that sense, because muscle's way harder to put on than, say, lose body fat. Body fat's way easier than actually building muscle. Building muscle takes time. Losing body fat can be like that. You know, you can do it really quickly in relative terms. So what I would do there is, you need to really structure your training around everything. Marathon, keeping muscle, and is it football? Soccer, Gaelic. You can do all three, but you need to nail your training, nutrition, and supplements. Like, you got to keep your calories high enough to keep that muscle. You're going to take a massive amount of leucine and branched chain amino acids because your training volume is probably so high because you're probably doing your marathon runs, you're training for the runs. So even your glycogen stores are probably getting depleted very, very regularly. So what I would make sure you're focusing on in the gym is, for example, if this was me, I'll offer context as opposed to the specific science behind each thing. If that was me in that situation, I would literally have my football training, which is probably 2 nights a week. I'd have my gym probably 2 nights a week, and then I'd do 1 long distance run and I'd rest 2 days. I'd probably jack up my calories to around 4,000, maybe more, you know, depending on the training volume. I would be focusing on heavy hypertrophy lifts purely in my training. I'd be resting for good periods and I'd be moving relatively big weight. People always say that I don't move big weight. I don't. It's relative. Like, lifting heavy is relative to each person. Like, I lift the amount of weight I can lift with perfect form for the rep range. So if you're working 8 to 10 reps and you're failing at the 8 rep, you're nailing that. So I'd focus my gym on that to keep and hold any size you have. Make sure your leucine is high enough so that your body never really drops into eating into any muscle, because leucine and BCAAs preserve that. That's why they work so well. They'll preserve the muscle you have. So I would make sure that those supplements are on par, and then I would tailor your training around it and make sure your calories are high enough. Does that make sense? That's exactly what I would do in that situation. Yeah.
Have you ever experienced exertion migraines when you're training, like horrendous migraines just when you're in the gym?
No, but I have. Yeah, yes, I have. Yes and no. Maybe they were fucking migraines. What I find is I used to get really bad sinuses. My sinuses used to be fucked, and I used to find if I trained when I had a headache, it would start to throb and like become like a migraine. What I've found works for me, so again, I can offer what I've done, because I've had people that, assuming that everything is okay with like electrolytes, sodium levels, salt, all of that, assuming that's right and it's just purely migraine. Is it?
It will come on in the gym, like I wouldn't have it beforehand. It was that when I would train,
Is it regular? Is it chronic, or something that just sporadically happens, or?
Recently it's happening a lot.
Okay, a couple of things that I found that has caused that with some of my women, some of it's estrogen based as well. So what I found is girls around the time of the month can normally get that because your hormones are a little bit more out of whack. So it generally is around that period, depending on, each person's girl cycle and stuff like that. It can vary. I'd also make sure that everything else was on par. The obvious ones, your hydration levels, obviously, your blood glucose, your sugars, and then your electrolytes and things, making sure that's all on par, because that can all give you a really bad headache if your body's out of balance with it. What I would start doing is start recording when it is, and if it's coming around the same time every single month, it's hormonal, which means you might need some DIM or something like that to balance out the estrogen. It varies, or something else that balances out estrogen. So that can be a part of it. Also, I found one of my girls had a similar issue when she switched her birth control. She went on to a different pill, and hers was purely hormonal based. And then she switched her pill back to the one she was on before, and they went away. So it's a little bit harder with girls if it's that, because it varies on your hormones. But keep track of that and make sure you're covering all the other angles. And apart from that, then it's going to be context on, I'd have to talk more to kind of get your situation and stuff like that, because to see if it's another factor that's causing it. Your body's fucking incredible. Like, you'll have people that are stressed in their jobs and start to get headaches in the middle of their workout because their body's like, fuck you, I'm too stressed, stop. Like, your body will do that. It's crazy, Anything else? Yeah.
You do the 2-1-2 reps, so 2 going down, pause, and 2 going up.
Mm-hmm.
Would that be suited for Gaelic, or is it more explosive? Would be more suited?
I'll answer that in 2 parts. One, it's not ideal for Gaelic because it's very, very time under tension. That program is based on tearing fibers, which is very much a case of body composition and how you want to look. You're not going to get direct performance from that. Number 2, in my GAA program, I have hypertrophy at the start, because you can do 2-1-2 intention style training as long as it's not the only thing you do. So for example, in my GA program, it's hypertrophy at the start, there's metabolic conditioning or strength and conditioning in the middle, and then they flip depending on the version of the program. So depending on the goals, they'll vary. So that 2-1-2 works, but don't build your whole program around that. for performance, because it was that's what fucking ruined me. It's why I built the GA program, was because I was doing bodybuilding, playing football, you know, and I kept getting injured because I was tearing fibers. I looked good, like, but my performance went to shit, you know, because you're not working for that tension range in a game, and what happens there is you're tearing fibers, they're growing back in hypertrophy range, and also the movements matter. So there's an argument that you might get away with 2-1-2 in a movement that's like making you twist and turn, you know, because at least it's mimicking what you'd be doing on the pitch. But I would build a program, keep the 2-1-2, but make sure you're doing other explosive work elsewhere. My favorite rep range purely for a sport, again, this is just preference because this is context, is slow negatives, explosive positives. You know, like on a bench press, a 4 or 5 second negative and then an explosive positive. On a squat, slow negative, explosive positive. That's personal though. That's a personal preference. You know, everyone's program will be different, you know, but that's what I like.
So would walking lunges be better as opposed to standing lunges regularly?
No, I like walking lunges are a little bit different to normal static movements or one plane of motion movements. I quite like walk. The key with walking lunges for an athlete and a girl trying to build her glutes is to gauge your glutes on the lunge. So when you lunge, you want to step in and you want to squeeze the glute on the non-lunge leg, because that's what's going to make it fire better. It's what's going to build bigger glutes. You know, if you want to hit your quads, you do a shorter step and you step and push to the heel on the quad of the lunge leg. So you can do any variation of lunge, and depending on the part of the muscle you want to fire. For an athlete, like in my lunge program, I would have somebody explode off the lunge on that leg, because not only have you contracted it to fire, you're then exploding off. A girl doesn't need to do that because you just want to hypertrophy the glute on the lunge. You know, so, or hypertrophy, whatever the fuck. I remember someone was like, hypertrophy on fucking Facebook. I was like, fuck you is the way I say it, you know. So yeah, so it varies. You know, it's a case of depending on this is why I love training and programs and stuff, because depending on the goal, it could be completely different. You know, you want to get better at football, you do a lunge a certain way. You want to build your glutes bigger, you're going to do it a different way. But it's the same movement done in. Like I have some of the same moves in my online program as my GA program, but they're done in different ways because the goal is completely different. One's trying to explode up, get power. The beauty of training that way too is you're going to change the body composition as well, because it's fucking shit's hard. Like lunge isn't easy for anybody. Like, but it's just a case of whatever your goals are and working it to that. You know, awesome. I find personally, but everyone's different. I find personally I've always responded best hitting body parts twice a week. Like I always, from body composition, from a pure look point of view, this is why I love push-pull legs. You know, because push is all your push moves, pull is all your pull moves, and then legs. And doing push-pull legs, rest was always the program I responded amazingly well to, because not only was I hitting every muscle group twice, but I wasn't completely fucking ruining it in every session, because it was like 2 or 3 moves of chest, 2 or 3 moves of triceps twice a week. So I was getting quality over quantity. So I loved that system. But then there's an argument for weak body parts. Like I went through a phase where I did chest like 4 or 5 times a week because I was trying to bring it up, and I was trying to, there's a system I use with people sometimes when they go on holidays. It's called strategic overtraining, where you strategically overtrain the muscle and then you go away and then it repairs back and it comes back bigger and better than it ever was. Frank Zane, I think, invented it. He was a bodybuilder in the 70s. Strategic overtraining. So I would do it, and I do it with full body if I was going on holiday. I remember I went to Barcelona 2 years ago and I did the strategic overtraining, which basically meant, this was before I was competing, it basically meant that I was doing like 2-day sessions and I was working to failure in every workout, and I did this for about 7-8 days and consistently, no break, and then I took the whole week off. And about 4 or 5 days into the rest, I looked the best I think I'd ever looked in my entire life, because your body starts to rebound back out the other way, and you tend to repair those fibers, repair those cells, because you've been in such a state of CNS and muscular fatigue. The repair makes you bigger, more ripped and leaner on the other side. So that's a case of, you could do that with one muscle as well, and that works as well. So again, it all comes into context, but from a general lifestyle, I personally found twice a week. I found twice a week for weak body parts definite. You know, and I do that with people all the time. You know, a lot of people in my online program are like, I'm trying to make up my chest. I'm like, you actually hit chest twice in my online program, in the men's one, so that's not a good example. But I'll have, say people that want to bring up their triceps, you know, I'd be like, or bring up their arms. I'm like, okay, you're going to do arms twice a week, so we're going to vary up so that you're hitting that twice a week, because you prioritize the weaker body parts, because we all train the body parts we love to train, you know, but that's really not the way you should do it. You should prioritize the ones that, you know, the weakest. you know, and that's what I would do. So I would literally design your program based around doing your weak parts more. And like I went through nearly a whole year not training shoulders and arms when I lived in London, because I grew up on a fucking farm. Like, I have shoulders and arms that I can train them once and they'll stay fucking in shape for 2 weeks. But I gotta train my fucking legs every week, twice a week. I gotta train my chest because it atrophies, it goes smaller, or perceives goes smaller, I feel. But I went a whole year without training shoulders or arms. I got hit in like circuit work, but it didn't directly hit them because I was trying to bring up other body parts in alignment. It's why I was symmetrical when I started competing, was because I took a year off my strongest body part, because I was lugging shit around the farm for fucking 10 years. Like, so my arms grew and my shoulders grew. So, and everyone has a background, you know, if you're a Irish dancer, your calves are probably jacked. Like, you probably have big calves, you know, so you don't need to ever train them. You know, and people will have different things. If you're from a powerlifting background, you might have a massive chest, so you need to work your back. So you could even take time off training those body parts and just bring everything up in symmetry. That's purely from like a looks point of view. Does that make sense? Yep. Awesome. All right, I'll leave it at that, and what I'll do is I will, literally anyone that wants to come up, will come if you want to chat to me one-to-one or get a photo, because I meant to get your photo. Fucking, I meant to come back to you, and then I got fucking chatting, fucking ADHD kicking in again. I'm like, oh, person over here. So again, before anyone that's going to head off now, I just want to say a massive thank you for coming out as well. Like, it's, as I said, it blows my mind. I love it when people come up for photos or taking time out of your day to come down and just hear me chat, and I hope you got something from it, and I hope it helped in terms of whatever it is that you were looking to get when you came here, in terms of nutrition or mindset or life or books or whatever it was. So hopefully it helps. So I want to say a massive thank you. If you want to do a line up here, I'll just chat to you. If you want to come up in 1s, 2s, 3s, whoever you're with or whatever it is, I will do that now. So thank you all very much. Cheers.